Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from where the location you are joining. We are happy to welcome you to our last session of our Intro to CoMapeo webinar series. Um, Give me 1 second because, okay. Today we will be presenting in English. I will introduce my colleagues in a bit, but we also have two amazing Bahasa interpreters, Galo and Tony. Thank you for being here. To turn on the interpretation, you will find this icon in the bottom menu of the screen, and there you can click Bahasa. You wish to listen in Bahasa. At the end, we will have a session, an open floor for questions. You are welcome to do them in Bahasa or English, and we will have both languages possible for all of us to understand each other in both languages. Um, well, my name is Maria Alvarez Malvido. I am from Mexico, and I'm currently calling from London, UK, where I'm currently based. Today, also my friends and colleagues, Alia, who is Community Partnership Lead at Awana Digital, is here. I will let her introduce herself with more detail in a bit. And Gregor, who is the Tech Director at Awana Digital, is also here with us today, who will be supporting us more behind the scenes with questions, answers, um, and accompanying us through the session. I will pass sorry, the mic to, I know, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to manage the slides as well. Okay, no, sorry. Before passing the mic to my colleague Alia, just to share with you, we are Awana Digital. We are possibly you know us from our former name Digital Democracy. We switched our names last year, finding a name that better suits what we do. Awana means weaving in Quechua, and what we mainly do is supporting our partners, indigenous peoples and local communities, weaving technology in their process to defend their land and their rights. We are a small organization of about 18 people. Most of the team is located in North and South America, and three of us, which is the three people you see here, are located in Europe. Part of the team, almost half of the team, works in the development of technology that we will be presenting today. And the other part of the team works closely with the communities that are using and the people who are using the tool and defending their territories. And together, we support the co-development of this tool and the improvement of the tool for the people who are using it. So today, our plan for today is to present for about 30 minutes and then leave some moments to hear from you, to respond to questions. And we will start with the biggest question: what is CoMapeo, which is what brings us today here with you. Why did we create it? Who is it for? How can it be used? And where is it currently being used? We are happy to share with you some stories from the people who we are co-designing this tool with and who are on the front lines using it, which is the best way to share what this is about. And like I said, at the end, we will have a moment to have questions and answers, either through the microphone or through the chat. At this moment, we invite you to use the chat, which is in the menu that I think you find below in Zoom, to write your name and organization and or the community that you are from and where you are calling from. We also invite you to use this chat through the presentation to share any thoughts, to ask questions. And next to the chat, you will see that there is another kind of chat, which is questions and answers. You can ask your questions there. We will respond some of them along the presentation, and we can also dive deeper into them at the end of the presentation. If you prefer to participate orally, we will have that moment at the end where we are happy to hear you either in Bahasa or in English, and we will do our best to respond all your questions. To do that, when we invite you for the question and answer moment, we will invite you to raise the Zoom hand so we know you want to speak, and we can pass you the microphone. So to start with, and the bigger question, what is CoMapeo? CoMapeo, in general terms, it's a tool that works in mobile, in Android phones, and in desktop, and it has been designed for people to collaborate in mapping and monitoring, and for communities to basically gather information and place-based information of the territories they live in, of what matters to them, of everything that is happening around them. And it is a tool that we have co-designed through long partnerships and collaborations with the people that are defending their lands and rights, mainly indigenous peoples. And to better tell you what is CoMapeo and why CoMapeo exists, I'm gonna pass the word to Alia, who will share you a window to the story of how this came to be what it is today.
Thank you so much, Maria. And good afternoon or good evening or good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled you could all join us. It's lovely to see some names that I know, some people I know in the chat, and also lots of new people. So I hope you find this webinar informative, and I look forward to hearing, your questions and any comments and use cases you might be thinking about afterwards. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we created CoMapeo in the first place. If we go back quite a few decades, maybe two and a half decades, some of our team was working alongside indigenous communities in the Western Amazon. So this is areas of Ecuador and Peru. And we were supporting territory mapping and monitoring initiatives by communities. And this kind of work is important, as I'm sure many of you will realize, because mapping ancestral territory use and threats can provide really critical evidence which communities can use to defend their rights. However, one thing we found at the time, and this is, like I said, going back many years now, was that the mapping technologies which were around then really fell short on many fronts in terms of being properly supportive of community needs. And they often created dependencies within the communities. For example, most of the tech at the time required internet connectivity to work. This was long before the days of Starlink, and many communities had to travel far or really long distances to reach places with a connection. The tech often also relied on centralized databases, which weren't owned or even manageable by the communities. So control over data and knowledge was often given up to others, either external experts or large companies where the data was hosted. The tech was also often hard to learn, very complex, maybe over complex for some of the initial needs that communities had. And it wasn't available in the right languages for them and didn't have intuitive, easy to use interfaces. And another thing is that some of the tech might have been expensive to buy in the first place or to maintain access to in the long run. So then we fast forward a few years. This was a problem that was simmering away in some of our minds. And then moving to the next slide, Maria, please. In 2015, the Warani people of Ecuador asked Awana Digital to support a new territory mapping initiative, which they wanted to manage themselves. So they'd been involved in mapping before, but this time they really wanted to control the mapping themselves. And they wanted to create a map of all the life, history, and culture within their lands. After trying out existing mapping and GIS software with them, we decided to co-develop a new tool basically for all of the reasons that I listed, a new tool which would enable them to map their lands and manage their data themselves in their communities without needing internet access. Can you move on 2 slides, please, Maria? And this is how Mapeo, which became CoMapeo, was born. And over the following 4 years, the Warani team created maps of 22 communities, documenting sacred and historical sites, medicinal plants and hunting camps, and georeferencing and naming the hundreds of rivers and streams that run through their territory. The next slide, please. With Mapeo, they were able to demonstrate that the empty space on the state's maps was in reality full of life and was critical to their and other beings' survival. It was territory lived in and loved by the Warani for generations. The Warani then used these maps in a court case against the state because the Ecuadorian government had created oil concessions that overlapped their lands without following a proper consultation process. And the Warani won that legal case and protected 200,000 hectares of Amazon forest from oil drilling, demonstrating how powerful community-led mapping can be. We then went on to work with many of their neighbours and allies across the Amazon to further develop and refine Mapeo, and last year launched an improved and updated tool called CoMapeo. And the next slide, please. So who is CoMapeo for? We really believe that CoMapeo can be used by any community of people who are looking for an easy-to-use tool that will enable them to gather, manage, and use place-based information, photos and videos while protecting their data. Current users are quite diverse, but they include Indigenous communities and other groups doing community-led conservation, people working to defend environmental defenders, traditional knowledge keepers, farmers and agroecologists, community organizers, foragers, and human rights activists. Now, I mentioned that we started the design process with the Warani in Ecuador and then with others in the Amazon. However, over the last few years, I'd say the sort of last 5 or 6 years, we've started expanding our partnerships and are now working with communities in East Africa and in Southeast Asia to understand their needs and to make sure that the tool can be used in as many contexts as possible to support land defenders' work. We're also working now on documentation and making the customization of CoMapeo as easy and accessible as possible for anyone interested in using it. So we don't want to become another dependency in this chain. We want communities to be able to use it without lots of support from us. So why might communities start using CoMapeo? We know that communities use it for many different reasons, depending on their needs, on the threats, and on the context which they live in. Some of these might be documenting threats to their land, such as oil and gas, gold mining, logging, new roads. Some might use it to map ancestral territory for land claims or to delimit territories for land claims to the government. Some are using it to collect biodiversity data and monitor biodiversity on their land. Communities use it a lot for sort of fostering and supporting intergenerational knowledge sharing, and also safeguarding territories and cultural knowledge for future generations. And in many cases, in fact, in all cases, really, the community might start out with one particular need and objective for the mapping or monitoring. And then as they go through the process, lots of those other reasons also come in and are supported. So why use CoMapeo over other tools? There are now lots of other monitoring and mapping tools out there, and many of them are also, fulfill some of the reasons why we started building CoMapeo in the first place. And all these different tools have different strengths and weaknesses and are best used for slightly different use cases. And it might be that governments require you to use a particular tool. It might be that all the neighboring communities are using a tool and therefore that's the best one to use because information is more easily interoperable. However, this list shows some of the reasons that influenced the partners that we know to use CoMapeo. We also know that it's not the right tool in all circumstances. However, people seem to like CoMapeo because it's offline first, so it will always work in an offline workflow. It's intuitive and easy to use. We've had communities pick it up who are non-literate, so they can't read text, and they can still follow a reasonably icon-led workflow to collect data. The data that you're storing there is secure, it's encrypted. The app itself is customizable, so you can add your own icons, you can translate it into your own language. The tool respects indigenous data sovereignty, so all of the data stays local to you and your devices and your project, and you choose whether to share it with anyone. So it doesn't come to us, it doesn't go to Google, it doesn't go to the government unless you choose to share it. And it's also a completely free tool. There's no cost to use it at all. So I'm going to pass over to Maria again now, who'll walk you through some of the screens of CoMapeo and give you a better sense of how it actually works and what it can do.
Thank you very much, Alia. And yes, to show you an overview of how this looks and how it actually works. As I said before, it works in Android phones, and it uses the feature that any Android phone have. So basically what it allows you to do, like you can see in the first screen, is capture your location in the map using the GPS signal of the phone, which can work having or not access to the internet. Once you capture your location of the point, you can add a category or a tag to it. For example, this is the default categories that CoMapeo comes with, but you can always customize it depending on your context or what you want to map as a community, what's happening around you. So once you capture your location and you give it a tag or a category, for example, here is animal or community or a fishing site, you can add information to that point. For example, you could add a series of questions to respond to, or type field notes using the keyboard on your phone. So in that point, you will have the geolocation, the date, the time, the category, and any other written detail that you want to add. And using the camera of your phone, you can add a photo, more than one photo that adds information to that point. For example, here is a photo of our partners using CoMapeo to take a photo in the coast, and this is part of their biodiversity monitoring process. So besides the written details and the photo, you can also use the microphone of the phone to add an audio recording. This could be a soundscape of how it sounds around this point. This could be an oral testimony. This could be a story. We know for many of our partners, orality is very important as well, and sound can tell a lot of things. So you can make up to 5 minutes length recordings. And all that together goes together with the point in the map. On the right side, you can see that with CoMapeo, besides only adding points, you can also record tracks, which is basically a journey you can do walking the land. So you can start and finish in a different point of your territory, and you can record the line happening through that movement, and also add more information through that track. This is used in different cases to, for example, document boundaries or hunting trails, depending of how the community is using CoMapeo, of course. And like you can see in the middle, in the screen in the middle, with CoMapeo, you can also give devices or members of the team different roles. There's coordinators and there's participants. So this supports, this gives the devices different roles, from being able to delete data, to add people, and to make sure, and this always requires a lot of human coordination, but this allows that the data of CoMapeo stays within the people involved in the project. and it cannot be shared with people outside the project or the people that you are mapping with. So this is a process that protects the mapping data of the team. This is another example. These are Ogiek women. This is a photo from our partners in Kenya. They are doing a monitoring, community-led biodiversity monitoring. The women in this community are the stewards of the bamboo forest. They are the ones that best know these areas that are key to the wellness of the territory, to the elephants that they coexist with. So this is them using CoMapeo to record bird songs, which speak a lot of how healthy the bamboo forest is, and it is them who are the experts of this specific area. Lastly, I'm gonna explain after this a little bit more of how it works without internet. But we've worked to make CoMapeo accessible and easy for people in the same team to exchange the information that they gather in the territory. So if I go, for example, here to one street and map different points of the east side of this community, and another mapper goes to the west side, then they can easily get together and exchange the information they gather, and each of them will have a copy of the information that was gathered through the process. And again, one of the focus of the design behind CoMapeo is to make this safe for only people involved in the project to exchange the information that they have of their land. Then there is projects, which allows community to have basically different projects within the same device and without mixing the data that it's inside them. So if one community is mapping their ancestral lands with all, for example, the sacred places that they know of, it can be in one project. And if they want to record or document in a separate project the human rights violations that is happening in the same territory, this can be documented in different projects without mixing the data, but using the same device. And lastly, we've made CoMapeo very customizable because we know, as Alia shared, this comes from a story in a specific place in the Amazon rainforest, but we know that it has been a tool that has worked for very different contexts and for people facing very different threats. So while it comes with a default categories, a default list of languages, it is customizable, so people can customize the background map that comes with it, the language, and also the categories with which you want to tag each of the points on the map that you document. So everything I've shared is CoMapeo working in smartphones, but CoMapeo also works in this desktop. It's like a sister tool. You can using desktop or not. You can only work with your mobile, but communities have found very useful to use CoMapeo in the desktop to basically visualize the data and edit or validate the information that you gather using the mobile phones. The main difference is that CoMapeo working in the computer cannot add data. You cannot gather data using the computer, the desktop, but the bigger screen and the design behind it, it's focused on communities getting together to see it, edit it, and review the data they've collected. This is, for example, a photo of the Waorani process, and here a youth and an elder are reviewing the data that was collected through the phones, but they're using the desktop to review what was mapped and confirm or validate with the knowledge of the elders that the information is right. And here is another example of an Ogiek woman mapper who in this case, they also used CoMapeo desktop and managed to share it on a screen to share with more of the community members the information that they were gathering and validate that the name that were given, the information, and the knowledge documented was right in a collective decision. So there is actually an elder counseling reviewing the data together. So one of the questions that we get a lot is how does it work offline? How can you share information between different people in places where there is no internet? Or how come you don't need to send the information to, like Alia was saying, to a server somewhere else, or to use a Google Drive to share the information? And it's because in general terms, CoMapeo is designed in a peer-to-peer decentralized database. And that happens behind the scenes of all the screens that I shared you, but it allows devices or smartphones to communicate. This can be using a hotspot of one of the phones or a router with Wi-Fi signal. Even if it doesn't have internet, it allows the phones to connect and share the data between the phones that are part of the project. There is not a central server. The information is copied across the phone, so they stay local. They stay in the phones in the hands of the people that are using it. As Alia mentioned, we don't have access to any of that data or anyone else. The information stays in the devices and is shared across them. This also helps if, for example, one phone falls into the river. If that phone has exchanged the data with another phone, then the data will have a backup, which is in the other phone or in the other phones in the mapping project. And this doesn't, any step in this process uses internet. It's just connection between the phones, again, using a router or the hotspot of one of the phones. And this is how CoMapeo was originally co-designed, and a key feature that has stayed, because this is very relevant for many partners, for data sovereignty, to have control of their data, to know where it is and to take care of it in their hands. And also because many places that we work with don't have internet in all of the territory or in any part of the territory. However, for different partners, it has been important, or they've shared that it would also be important to have the option to share it using the internet, either to have a backup for safety, or for the possibility, sometimes depending the territory and the context, to exchange data. So now there is an option to also use a server, which would mean to exchange information using the internet. We collaborate with some of the partners supporting with a server via WANA, but also if the team has capacity to manage their own server, you could do this in your own server, and it will connect with the rest of the devices as if it was another device, but it will use the internet to share the information between the devices in a phone. If you have any questions about this, we can clarify or dive more into it in the questions and answers. So please don't hesitate to share a question. And I've given a lot of information about the tool, but I think what best shares how this works and how CoMapeo is happening and being used around the world are the stories from the people using it. So I'm gonna pass it back to Alia, who will share you some of the stories, little windows to how people are using it in different contexts.
Thank you, Maria. So the first case I'm going to tell you about is in Brazil, in the Yavari Valley, where a coalition of indigenous guardians has been using CoMapeo since 2021 to monitor 8.5 million hectares of Amazon rainforest. This is a huge indigenous territory managed by lots of different indigenous groups together. And their land is facing many different threats, for example, logging, gold mining, illegal fishing, and other kinds of land invasions. And it's a very dangerous area to work. People have been assassinated in that area defending land, and people are regularly threatened. So Univaja, the indigenous organization, has built a pretty robust monitoring system, and teams have been trained in a variety of skills, including first aid and security protocols, and as well as the monitoring and mapping techniques. And today they have over 100 rangers who are using CoMapeo to monitor the whole of the Javari Valley. And they're collecting evidence of infractions such as this illegal logging in the image, and which they can report to the government in order that the government take action. Another quite different use case, jumping across over to Africa. So in Tanzania, the Maasai organization Final Governance, Maria, can you change the slide, has been using CoMapeo since 2024 to carry out some urgent mapping work within a conservation area called Ngorongoro in northern Tanzania. There are 10,000 Maasai living in the area, and they've been facing ongoing threats of eviction from the Tanzanian government. So the Tanzanian government is prioritizing tourism and hunting over local livelihoods and Maasai culture and conservation models. So the communities who are being threatened with eviction have been mapping their sacred and historical sites, and also they're documenting their deep relationship to the ecosystem and its flora and fauna. And their hope is that they can use the maps that they're making to oppose the evictions. And if they do end up being evicted, that they'll have gathered that historical and cultural knowledge so that they can pass it on to future generations, and also hopefully in the future try and reclaim land which they've maybe lost. And then if we go over slightly closer, maybe to some of you in Indonesia, not that close, but in the Pacific at least, in the Solomon Islands, the Masina Greenbelt has been using Mapeo and CoMapeo since 2022 to monitor the last remaining intact forests in the Sky Islands region. So in 2024, community monitors used CoMapeo along with satellite alerts to report evidence of illegal logging to the Ministry of the Environment. And on the basis of that evidence, the government was able to step in and stop the logging. And given the success of the work on one island, Malaita, the Islands Knowledge Institute, known as IKI, which works across the Solomon Islands, has recently decided to expand the monitoring to other islands and community teams. And some of our team was able to travel out there earlier this year to support the training workshops in new areas. So that's just a little taste of some examples of how different groups have been using CoMapeo recently. And I'll pass back to Maria for some final words, and then we'll move to the questions.
Thank you very much, Alia. So yeah, I hope this overview sparks some ideas or questions. If you want to try it out, to explore how it looks, if it would be useful for your community or for any community that you know, you can go to the Play Store and search for CoMapeo or use this QR code and download it. Like we've said, it's free, it's open source. Or you can also go to the website, which is comapeo.app, and you can download it there. Also in that website, we have documented some step-by-step guides to get started and to explore the tool, which is in this other QR code. Right now it's available in English and in Spanish. And you can also get in touch with this email address or jump into one of our websites. We have the CoMapeo website. We have the Awana Digital website, which speaks more about our team and how we work, how we co-develop the app. And lastly, we would invite you to have a look at airDefendersToolkit.com, where we have more stories from from people using these and other tools to defend their territories. And I'll leave it here, so we have 20 minutes to respond to any questions, to hear from you. So if you want to ask a question orally, again, this would be the time to raise the Zoom hand and we could pass the microphone to you, or you are also invited to write your question in the question and answer chat.
Thanks, Maria. I'm looking at the questions that have already been answered by Gregor. Thank you, Gregor, for all your question answering. Some of the questions are quite technical, so I'm not going to answer the really technical or specific ones. But Arki asks whether it's possible to customize CoMapeo observations into multiple languages, and that is possible. So the whole app is already available in a few languages, and further languages can be added. And we invite people on as collaborators to help with that translation. And then if you customize CoMapeo further to create your own icons and categories, you can set those up in whatever languages you like, including indigenous languages. There's a question about whether CoMapeo can display maps in 3D, because often for indigenous communities, it's easier for them to locate things and understand the landscape if it's 3D. This is a question from Asfree. And we haven't currently experimented with that. It's not been a request, but the map platform which we use, which is called Map Libre, Gregor says, I'm glad you're on this call, Gregor. Gregor says that it has recently added the possibility of supporting 3D maps. So it's something that we could look into. Gregor, do you want to answer a couple of questions so you get to not just like be a little techie person tapping away?
Just finding my Zoom screen. Yeah, well, there was a question from Arki as well, I think worth sharing with others about image notarization. This is not something that is sort of fully enabled to kind of use publicly, but one of the core sort of benefits of CoMapeo and the way it works is every piece of data that you store in it is digitally signed in a way that means it can't be kind of forged or modified or changed by anybody afterwards. So one of the things we are working on in the second half of this year and maybe running into the beginning of next year is a sort of full verification process that enables you to generate signatures along with your data that provide digital proof that the data you collected was collected where you say it was, and that the images haven't been tampered with.
I see that Simon has got your hand raised. Maria, can we enable Simon to speak?
The mic is your side.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Wow, I feel like I've been given the honor to speak. Thank you very much. It's a really interesting tool and clearly really important and is doing a lot of great work already. So congratulations. I've just got a couple of questions, if that's okay. First one is, it's very impressive how data can be shared completely offline between phones. I'm wondering, is transferred to the desktop though? Presumably that needs internet. And in which case, how quick can data that's urgent, for example, people are taking reports of illegal logging and say it's happened that day or the day before and needs to be sent quickly. How quickly can that process actually happen? I know that you noted there one of the projects had a satellite connection as well. Is that necessary to send data urgently, or can it be done quickly through other means? That's the first question. Second question is, do you have any examples of how the desktop kind of visualizing and presenting the data has been used for advocacy? For example, to a government, like in that Rorani case, how is the data actually presented to stakeholders and decision makers? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon. I'll answer the first, and I think Alia or Maria will be able to answer the second. The desktop app also exchanges the data offline with the mobile clients. What you need is a local Wi-Fi network, but it doesn't need connection to the internet, and that will exchange as fast as the kind of local Wi-Fi network works. For urgent cases, when you need to kind of data out, what most users use right now is the sharing tool within the observation, which kind of connects via the sort of Android share sheet that you use when you're sharing any data. So that can be sent via WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram or email for sharing a single observation with the kind of coordinates, a photograph, and the other data that you filled in, and that's what most users use to send something urgently.
Yeah, I'll just add to that because we now have also got this remote archive option. So if a community does have access to the internet, or whether they have a Starlink in the community, some other kind of connection, or they just have Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, mobile signal like 4G. If they have the remote archive as part of the project, then the data can exchange with the remote archive and get back to their office, or get back to you in London or anywhere else, and then be shared that way as well. So there are a few different mechanisms to do that. Yeah, let us know if that answers your question, or if there's something more specific you're wondering about, Simon. And then your other question about how the desktop has been used in advocacy. So I think mainly the desktop is used as, like Maria was sharing, about verifying the data and showing it back to the community, either just on the computer screen with a few people or projecting it and verifying data there altogether. I can't cite cases where a community's taken the computer and the CoMapeo desktop screen to use with government or other officials. I think they've shared. Yeah, I think in the Yogyakarta case in Mount Elgon, they probably shared the screen there to show what had been done, but it wasn't a full exploration. It was just sort of showing the mapping work. The main way that advocacy has happened and that advocacy products are made is data is then exported from CoMapeo. And this is one of the limitations of the tool, is we haven't as yet built a kind of full mapping workflow through to creating a product within the tool. So it's a really great tool for collecting data, for checking it within a community, for managing and editing it and organizing it and doing that community collaborative workflow. And then in order to actually create a map to share with someone, that at the moment has to happen outside of CoMapeo. We are looking at ways of building some simple integrations for map creation into CoMapeo itself, so that you could print off a map with a legend and a title and things like that. But we also are very aware that we want to keep the tool simple to use, because it really is a sort of entry-level tool for communities, and that once people get more accustomed to GIS systems and information, then it might just be better to export the data to QGIS and build their map there. So the Warani did a lot of work with a lot of advocacy with maps, but they exported the data from QGIS and then built maps. And I supported them to build some maps. There was a story map, an interactive story map that they built, and then also print maps that we made, sort of in part with QGIS and in part with Mapbox. I think that answers that question. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to voice?
We have a question in Bahasa in the chat that I would ask the interpreters if you could read this, or help us translate it to English so that we can respond to it. Would be amazing.
Oh, it's been translated in the chat.
Sorry, I didn't see it yet.
That's okay, it just happened. We would like to learn more. What we need while learning is a guide and the technical steps for its use, especially for customary land data and commodity crops for joint marketing advocacy for Indigenous peoples. So thank you, Hieronymus, for your question and for your observation and comments and question. We have some materials that we can share. They are currently in English and Spanish. Spanish probably not very helpful to you. Some members of your team maybe can manage the English. We would love to be able to have materials translated into more languages. At the moment, we're working sort of within the capacity that we've got. But translation into Bahasa is certainly on our road plan, I think, for the next 3 months. So there should be guide materials of how to use CoMapeo in Bahasa within the next 3 months. And I think Maria has, I think it's on the download link, but Maria, maybe we can also share in the chat the link of where to access the materials and the guides which are currently there. And you might find the answers you need there, Hieronymus. And if you're not finding the answers you need, please let us know. Please write to us, and we can see if we can help you anymore. Okay, thank you, Mark. So Mark puts in the comments as well that maybe Nemus, I'm guessing that's where Hieronymus you're from. Maybe you can learn from the Falalano colleagues as a starting point. That would be wonderful, Mark, and our friends here from Falalano. We are also hoping to, I can't promise it yet, and then we have no dates for it, but we are hoping to visit Indonesia maybe in the next 6 to 9 months. I'd say either it's probably early next year, and to run some kind of gathering and training in CoMapeo. So, obviously we'll do what we can to support people to use it in the meantime. And then maybe there'll be an opportunity for some people to get together and in a peer learning environment to learn and share. I wonder, Mark, given that you've already volunteered a little bit of support in the chat, whether you'd like to, obviously in Bahasa probably makes most sense, and then with the interpreters translating into English. But if you'd like to just explain how you've been using it, or one of the colleagues here from Falalamo to explain how you.
Sorry, I just needed to allow Mark to talk. It's now enabled.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it seemed. I guess I can. Nggak tahu. Mungkin apakah Pak Anto masih ada di sini? Apakah Pak Anto mau atau ingin cerita sedikit terkait dengan pengalaman Anda dan pengalaman Falalamo dengan penggunaan Mapeo, CoMapeo di Halmera? Sorry, I just asked if Pak Anto's here. I don't know if Pak Anto's still in the call. If he wanted to share a little bit. Um, Ya, mungkin kalau dia nggak ada, em, Pak Nimus, jadi Falalamo mulai pakai CoMapeo tahun lalu untuk khususnya untuk buat peta-peta terkait dengan batasan wilayah adat dan batasan wilayah em, em, kelompok yang masih tinggal di dalam tengah hutan di sana. Jadi mereka mulai dengan untuk mengambil titik batasan wilayahnya kelompok-kelompok yang masih tinggal di dalam hutan di situ. Em, dan lewat CoMapeo mereka juga ambil beberapa titik terkait dengan em, apa ya, ada beberapa tempat yang penting, um, like titik sungai di dalam wilayah setiap kelompok, dan juga berapa orang sedang meninggal di setiap tempat dan bukan meninggal ya tinggal di setiap tempat dan um, kalau tidak salah mereka juga pakai CoMapeo untuk membantu buat uh, gambaran yang lebih lebih detail terkait dengan berapa orang overall nama nyawa masih ada di dalam setiap kelompok dan di mana mereka punya um, desa mereka. Jadi, tapi nanti kalau Pak Nemos dan teman-teman Tanah tertarik untuk belajar lebih dalam terkait dengan um, eh, contoh itu, mungkin kita bisa memfasilitasi satu pertemuan online di antara Tanah dan Valoramo.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just wondering if there are any more questions. If there are no more questions, we can finish now. And thank you very much for your participation. And yeah, do drop us a message, send us an email if there's anything that we haven't been able to answer, or if you'd like any more information about anything. And yeah, we have all of your emails. So I think Maria will be following up in a few days, sending you a link to the video in case you want to watch back on any of it. And yeah, we will let you know, or certainly the people we identify as being based in or close to Indonesia, we'll let you know if we manage to organize a trip there over the next few months.
Just to add, thank you, Alia. With the email, I will share you the recording to everyone who registered, and some links, useful links, and we will also share a feedback survey. This is the first time we do something like this kind of webinar, so it would be great to hear if you have any thoughts of any other format of content that you would find useful if you want to explore CoMapeo and you would like support. It would be great to hear from you so we can keep improving how we share this information and stories. And yeah, just want to say thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you for the interpreters as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.